It's Tuesday, it's the 17th of June. I'm Moon Chang-keuk. This is ARIRANG News live from Seoul. Our top stories today. As President Park's new Prime Minister nominee finds himself under mounting pressure to voluntarily withdraw, all eyes are now on whether the presidential office will submit a proposal today for a parliamentary confirmation hearing this week. And the U.S. is deploying several hundred armed troops in and around Iraq and considering sending special forces soldiers, even as the White House insists anew that America will not be dragged into another war. As World Cup openers go, this was just about as bad as it gets for Portugal. Germany and the U.S. came out as winners. This as roughly 100,000 Koreans are set to gather across Korea to root for the Korean team in its first match against Russia tomorrow morning. We'll have those stories and more, but let's begin with what's rattling the political scene here in Korea. Despite the firestorm surrounding President Park's pick for Prime Minister over controversial remarks he's made over the years, the presidential office plans to forge ahead with his nomination. A formal request calling for a confirmation hearing is expected to be submitted to the National Assembly later today. And as our Ji Myung-kil reports, lawmakers are likely to make the process unpleasant for the Prime Minister designate.
Prime Minister nominee Moon Chang-keuk's apology for controversial remarks he made years back about Japan's colonization of the Korean peninsula doesn't go far enough for the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, or NPAD.
Japan's colonization remains the biggest scar for the Korean people. We cannot nominate a prime minister who has a distorted view of history. If the government proceeds with the confirmation hearings, it will be criticized for lacking common sense.
Should the presidential office push ahead with Moon's nomination, some NPAD lawmakers say they would consider boycotting the confirmation hearing in protest. And the negative views of the Prime Minister nominee aren't reserved for the opposition party. 6 first-time lawmakers of the ruling Saenuri Party have issued statements calling for Moon to withdraw his nomination, while a number of more experienced lawmakers have openly criticized him. But the ruling party's full leader, Lee Won-gu, plans to go ahead with the confirmation process.
There seem to be suspicions and doubts about the Prime Minister nominee, but the National Assembly has a duty to proceed with the confirmation hearing and evaluate whether the candidate is suitable.
Once the National Assembly receives a request calling for a confirmation hearing, which is likely to come Tuesday, they're required to hold one within 15 days. Ji Myung-kil, ARIRANG News.
Now, 15 crew members of the sunken Seoul ferry were back in court this Tuesday morning to answer to the charges against them. The captain of the vessel, Lee Jun-suk, bowed as he entered the courtroom, drawing anger from victims' families in attendance. Now, he, along with 3 of his senior crew, face charges of homicide by willful negligence. The prosecution says it will submit over 2,000 pieces of evidence to show that the crew was derelict in its duty to save the more than 300 people that died in that disaster. The defense plans to make its case by saying that all those that perished could not have been saved. Tuesday's session is the second since its trial opened last week. Now on to President Park's trip to Central Asia. On the first day of her state visit to Uzbekistan, the president met with Koreans and descendants of former Korean immigrants who were forcibly moved to Russia. She vowed to eradicate wrongful practices in the Korean society and do her best in revitalizing the economy. Our Choo-sun is traveling with the president, and she filed us this report from Tashkent.
President Park Geun-hye has vowed to expand economic cooperation and boost ties with Central Asia. Meeting Koreans and the descendants of Korean immigrants in the Russian Far East in Tashkent on Monday, President Park promoted her initiative to link energy and infrastructure in Eurasia. Talking about connecting Uzbekistan's rich resources with Korea's advanced technologies, President Park said more jobs would be created in both countries. The Korean leader then promised policies to help hundreds of thousands of ethnic Koreans in Central Asia to more easily visit and find employment in Korea. She also said teaching Korean language, history, and culture to Korean Uzbeks was a national priority for her government. asking for support for her proposed humanitarian and civilian-based exchanges with North Korea to better prepare for reunification. The South Korean president said she will, meanwhile, respond firmly to Pyongyang's provocative behavior.
저는 포기하지 않고 북한이 진정한 변화의 길로 나아갈 수 있도록 노력할 것입니다.
As for the recent ferry disaster in Korea, President Park said she will make good out of evil to revamp the national safety system.
비정상적인 관행과 문제들을 추상같이 바로잡고 경제 활성화의 불길을 살려서 세계 속에 자랑스러운 대한민국을 반드시 만들어 가겠습니다.
With the Eurasia Initiative high on her agenda, President Park is expected to seek to expand joint economic projects with Tashkent when she meets with Uzbek President Islam Karimov on Tuesday. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News, Tashkent.
Now moving on, in a sign of the quickly deteriorating situation in Iraq, the U.S. government is reportedly considering working, in some extent anyways, with its traditional enemy, Iran. Now keeping all options on the table, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says anything constructive to providing Iraq with stability will be considered, and that includes airstrikes. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The United States could cooperate with its traditional foe, Iran, to stop Sunni militants, known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, from continuing their rampage through Iraq. In an interview with Yahoo News on Monday, Secretary of State John Kerry said that while Washington is not in active discussions with Tehran, it will not rule out anything constructive in providing stability to the region. Another U.S. official said the two sides could discuss the situation in Iraq on the sidelines of nuclear talks scheduled for Wednesday in Vienna. If it were to happen, cooperation between Washington and Tehran to contain the Iraqi crisis will mark the first time in more than a decade for the two countries to jointly undertake a common security purpose. Iran is a strong backer of the Shia government in Iraq and has signaled a readiness to cooperate with the U.S. to contain the crisis. Pentagon, however, made it clear that it will not engage with Iran on military activities in Iraq. As the situation spirals out of control, Kerry added that airstrikes are an option available to Washington, but no detailed plans on how to coordinate them have been drawn up yet. Meanwhile, President Obama on Monday has notified Congress that 275 U.S. troops will be deployed to Iraq to provide support and security for U.S. personnel and the American embassy in Baghdad. The troops are combat ready and will remain in Iraq until the security situation is brought under control. About 160 troops are already in the country, including 50 Marines and more than 100 Army soldiers. Radical militants from the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant have seized large parts of northern Iraq over the last several days, threatening to dismember Iraq and unleash all-out sectarian warfare. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Chang-keuk live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks. Now, the value of Korea's stock market has fallen a notch compared to last year, settling as the world's 12th largest market. Why? Well, it's being partly attributed to the rise of the Indian market that is riding on the wave of so-called Modinomics. Right, Na Hyun-kyung tells us more.
The combined market capitalization of Korea's publicly listed companies crossed $1.2 trillion as of the end of last week. Citing Bloomberg data, Yonhap News reports that Korea took one step back from last year when its market was the 11th biggest in the world. Analysts say capital is flowing to other emerging economies in Asia, especially to India, where new Prime Minister Narendra Modi is pledging sweeping economic reforms. Thanks to his so-called Modinomics, India's benchmark Sensex has jumped 19% so far this year, with the total market value surging nearly 30%. Korea's main index, the Kospi, edged down 1% this year, and although total market capitalization went up by 4%, the actual increase will be lower because of the strengthening won. The Korean market currently makes up 1.9% of the global market. That's down 0.1 percentage points from last month and down 0.4 percentage points from August 2011, when it was at its highest. Experts say foreign buyers are moving their money away from Korea because they feel that Samsung Electronics, the major player on the Kospi, is not pushing for growth as strongly as they could. Another reason is said to be the weaker than expected performances by Korea's usual strongholds, the shipbuilding and petrochemical industries, which rely heavily on exports to China. 나현경, 아리랑 뉴스.
Well, the International Monetary Fund has cut its growth forecast for the U.S., citing a harsh winter that led to a weak first quarter. In its annual review of the U.S. economy, the IMF said it expects 2% growth this year, down from its 2.8% forecast back in April. However, it did say that it expects 3% growth next year. The IMF adds that the U.S. should cut spending and raise revenue in the long term, also suggesting that the country raises its minimum wage to reduce the poverty rate, currently at 15%. Well, smartphone watchers, beware. Your text messages, call history, and pretty much anything else you're doing with your phones could be under surveillance without you even knowing it. Our Kim Min-ji explains.
This smartphone has an application called mSpy installed on it. When the application is run, the messages and call history from the phone appear on the administrator's homepage. It reveals the current location of the smartphone, the phone's serial number, and mobile carrier. Phone conversations are even recorded.
그 위치가 어떻게 되죠?
네, 여기 종로구입니다. 그 위치가 어떻게 되죠? 네, 여기 종로구입니다.
These so-called spy applications have emerged as one of the newest problems for smartphone users, already wary of their privacy being invaded. Installing the application isn't that difficult either. After purchasing the application, you can install it secretly on a person's smartphone or send a smishing message that will install the application automatically. This will then keep track of the location of the smartphone, phone conversations, and even the user's activities on social networking services. The makers of such applications say they were developed to keep an eye on adolescent delinquents and to prevent the leaking of technologies. However, the applications are in fact being used to spy on employees or as a means to find out if the user is having an affair.
The hacker has full authority over a smartphone installed with the spy application. It can even lead to financial losses, as verification codes are sent to the phone when users make micropayments.
The application does not appear on the screen of your smartphone if installed secretly.
Users should not click on links of suspicious text messages. They should update the vaccines on their smartphones and check if their phones have been affected by malicious codes regularly.
With some 40 million smartphone users in Korea, there is a newfound sense of urgency to come up with technology that can counter such violations of privacy. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG NEWS.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are enjoying the World Cup Brazil 2014. Now, starting off with the latest game that ended on this Tuesday morning. The U.S. team scored easily the fastest goal so far at this year's World Cup in what turned out to be a thrilling and explosive match. It took Captain Clint Dempsey just 30 seconds to put the ball in the back of Ghana's net. Ghana leveled it up in the second half, but John Brooks headed home the winner in the 86th minute. But it was a completely different story in the match between Iran and Nigeria in Curitiba. They became the first team to draw in this year's World Cup, playing out a rather dull 0-0. Now moving on to another record, the first hat trick in Brazil. The honor goes to Germany's Thomas Müller. Müller was also cutting up controversy after he got head-butted by Pepe. The Portuguese player, thinking Müller was play acting, reacted angrily when the referee sent him packing with a red card. A man short before halftime and injuries on the Portuguese side, their star man Ronaldo couldn't work his usual magic on the pitch. But it sure was a thrilling night for the German fans, and whether you flew all the way to Brazil, watched from the comfort of your living room, or sat in a bar with a nice cold beer, the cheering goes on regardless. Our Connie Lee brings us some seriously happy German fans who got together to support their national team right here in Seoul.
Cheers and applause burst out from soccer fans who aren't shy about showing their passion.
I painted my nails in German colors and kind of dressed red, black and white.
Show your earrings.
Oh yeah, and here.
A World Cup winning team. World Cup winning team is Brazil.
The 2014 World Cup is in full swing, and here in Korea, you not only see Team Korea fans making a statement, you see fans from all over the world packing the pubs and restaurants to watch the games.
Even though most of the World Cup matches are in the wee hours here in Korea, it's the love of the game that is bringing together the different people who are all rooting for their home country.
The atmosphere is here, good atmosphere, and the people who really enjoy the soccer and usually enjoy the hangout gather here, so it's fun.
A handful of venues are open into the early morning hours in downtown Seoul to accommodate those who want to watch the matches live and on the big screen.
Korea, the times aren't great for the World Cup games, but we had a lot of interest in the World Cup. A lot of people were emailing us and sending us messages on the Facebook page.
And it seems like if you're a true fan of soccer, it doesn't matter where you are or what time the games are on, you watch and support, even if that means going into work the next day a little tired.
Yes, it's a bad time for going to work tomorrow, but if you really want to support your team, your national team, then it doesn't matter how late it is, you just need to support them.
Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Well, I guess Group G may stand for Germany after that. Now let's turn our attention to Group H now, Korea's group. The first matches in Group H kick off this Tuesday for early Wednesday morning, Korea time. The lineup against Russia will pretty much be the same as the previous international friendly matches, led by forward Park Ju-young. Now the Korean squad is busy training for what will hopefully be a victory against the Russians. Let's now hear from the players themselves.
We focused on our game strategies and fine-tuning set pieces. The training was smooth in our base camp as well as here in Koyeba.
We've thoroughly monitored our opponent on video, so we are aware of their strengths and weaknesses. We are 100% ready for this match.
Now, once again, Korea's first group match against Russia is at 6 p.m. in Guyaba local time. That's at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday morning here in Korea. Before that, Belgium and Algeria will have already finished their match, so we'll have a better idea about what Korea needs to do to put themselves in the driving seat to advance the next round. Now, those of you planning to join the Red Devils cheer on the Korean squad, here are the go-to places, the spots you should head to watch the game with thousands of others in front of huge screens. The cheers will be rather subdued this year following the ferry disaster in April. A rather reserved mass cheer will be held at Gwanghwamun Square instead of the City Hall, and another spot is prepared at Yeongdong-dae Boulevard, that's in front of the business district of Samsung Station. Now, Korea's superstar Psy is set to perform his latest hit, Hangover, and his other songs for the fans right there. We will bring you the live scenes of the cheering fans, and it's some sight to see, so stay tuned to ARIRANG for all excitement throughout the day.
And now let's get a look at the arts and culture scene of Korea. For that, we'll bring in our Im Yoon-hee, who has a closer look at a recently released musical that has K-pop fans very excited. So, good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon.
So, some of the music industry's most recognizable faces are going to be singing in the rain.
Exactly. So, SMCNC, which is actually a subsidiary group to SM Entertainment, a very well-known entertainment group, they finally lifted the curtains to the new musical Singing in the Rain. And now this musical has people very excited, and they're actually aiming to prove that K-pop can be applied to various different genres, such as musicals. Take a look.
Set in the 1950s, in a romantic Hollywood, Don Lockwood is a silent film star with humble roots as a musician, dancer, and stuntman. And now he's stuck between his jealous leading lady, Lena Lamont, and his true love, Kathy Selden. The musical, Singin' in the Rain, is based upon the 1952 film and has been adapted by theater troupes all over the world. Recently, a Korean version has been added to that list, and the help of some very popular faces have been cast, showing the versatility and talent of K-pop stars.
Even though this movie was released 50 years ago, I enjoy it so much. I've seen it over 20 times. I was so excited when I was cast for the main role of Don Lockwood, and I will do my very best at dancing, singing, and acting.
Well, Yuni, I think it's kind of obvious the kind of benefits musicals would get from casting these K-pop stars. Obviously, it will get the ticket sales going. But what about for the performers themselves? What do they get out of it?
Right, so some of these performers, K-pop stars, actually want to enter the musical field, and this is a way for them to do so. Now, the Baekhyun, actually, this is his debut performance. He's from EXO, and so he actually mentioned in an interview that he wanted this musical to show his musical growth and his talent. And so many other K-pop stars think the same way, and they want to explore different various fields.
Now, SM Entertainment, we know that it has a lot of businesses in K-pop or dramas, TV dramas, and even movies, but I haven't heard them doing musicals before.
Right, so this is actually a new thing, but they really have been pushing K-pop into other fields like musicals. So besides Singin' in the Rain, they also have another 4-part original musical that they're planning to release soon. They actually even already booked the venue, COEX, for that, and so that has many people excited, and you can be sure that they will cast pretty big, big faces for that as well.
Now, as for musicals, there are not only, the go-to scene for K-pop stars or singers, but also actors as well. And I hear that you have another performance that involves someone else, an actor stepping out of his comfort zone.
Right, exactly. So I have a play, and it's actually directed by the well-known actor Kim Soo-ro. Now, he did direct this play, and it is a very excited play that it has been released the second time around because it was so well received the first time. And so, take a look.
Actor Kim Soo-ro is known for his many starring roles in various movies and shows, but this time he takes a different seat and sits as director instead. Audacious Romance is a comedy love story about a boy and a girl who fall in love, but like most young romances, they fall apart. 10 years later, they meet again, now living 2 totally different lives, but finding that they still might have feelings for each other.
You know, we recognize Kim Soo-ro from the big screen. I mean, he's a very decorated, he has a decorated history on the screen, but what made him go to the stage?
Right, so he has been extremely successful in the industry, but he also said from the very start that he did want to go back to the theater, to the stage, which is where he began. And so actually in 2010, he co-produced a performance, a play called Gymnasium. And from there, that's when he really kind of opened the door for going back to the theater.
So this is not his first.
This production is actually his first, but this was produced a couple years ago. And so in 2011, he created the Kim Soo-ro Project. And from there, he aimed to produce original works by local playwrights, such as this work. And so this Audacious Romance, this is actually the first performance in this series of his. And so he also produced other ones, such as Black Mary Poppins and even Coffee Prince. And so he has been doing very well, been very well received, and he's bringing in a large crowd as well because of his popularity and because of his success as a director.
Well, a man of talent, and we will be looking forward to more of his productions on the stage as well. Now, Yuni, thank you so much for the report today, and we will take a break tomorrow for the World Cup games, but we'll be back later this week.
Go Korea. See you then.
Go Korea.
Good afternoon, Korean football fans. Don't have to wait much longer for Team Korea's first match in Brazil. The weather looks to be good for the opening kick with no rain in Cuiabá, and you can bet Koreans won't be getting much sleep tonight in the preparation for the game. There are about 27 places set up throughout the nation to catch the match with Russia tomorrow morning, and here in the capital, some roads will be blocked off to make some room for people who are planning to gather and watch the game together. Now, as for the weather conditions in Korea, it's generally cloudy today that will eventually give way to rain, but temperatures are pretty warm, up into the high 20s. And on Jeju Island, the first monsoon rain of the year has arrived. The total should be about 60 millimeters, and less than 5 millimeters are expected down in the southern regions and about 5 to 10 up into the central region. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out at 29 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 25 and 23 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 20, Dokdo at 21, while Mount Kumgang also tops out at 20. Well, that's all for now. Michelle Park-an, back to you, Kanyang.
Thanks, Michelle, for that. And that's it from me. I'll see you back here at 4 p.m. Korea time.